times.
Audio's going up. The image is up. Alright. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Theory Forge, Episode 5, Lore, Story, and Content Crafting. So, this episode, we're going to be having Velix running the show, so I pass it over to you in the upper left corner. Velix, why don't you begin?
Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Velix. You guys might know me from EQHammer.com. I write there and do a few columns throughout the week. Today, if you can see in the title, we're going to be talking lore, story, and content, which, if anybody, you guys know me, I'm so jazzed for this show because I love lore, I love the story, so I'm excited. But for those of you guys who don't know everybody else on the show, we do have some people here. We'll start just with our guest off to my left here. Is our special guest for today, Chad, and he's going to be... Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about what you do.
Salutations, my name is Chad. I'm a resident hobo on EQ Next related podcasts. I just hop around from one to the next whenever I feel. No, just kidding. I've been on the Evercast show now for a little over a year. We're an EverQuest Next landmark related podcast, longest running in the game so far. Mostly focused on just bringing the community together. So we've met a lot of people, Scott, I should use your game name, something I'm terrible at, you'll have to excuse me, Phantom X, Velix, and Legendary have all been on the show a couple times, at least once. Locke, though, on the other hand, this is actually my first time being able to meet Sir Locke 6 times, so I'm very glad to be on Theory Forge tonight. It's going to be crazy, ridiculous, absurd. Anyways, we go similar to Theory Forge. We go live on Sunday nights from 8 to 10 Pacific or Eastern time, 5 to 7. I can do math. East Pacific time. There we go. And we have a show coming up this Sunday, so be sure to check us out. Other than that, I'm excited for lore, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you guys for having me on.
All right, pretty boy, it's you, Locke.
Is it me? Hello.
It is.
I think Chad introduced me already. I do stuff and things, videos and streaming at Lock6Time on Twitter. I'm around. You guys know me. I hate doing this. Can we move on? I'm no good at it. I don't know what to say. Hello.
He writes for Zam.
I do.
He's got a nice beard. I'm going to introduce you for you, Locke.
Thank you.
Look, we just need to have you make a business card that you just read off what you do, so that way.
I said the things. I said videos and stuff. I don't know.
All his business.
I'm gonna write a script for next time.
There you go. What you drinking there?
This is the Rockstar energy drink, the high caffeine special. I've had a normal Monster already, but this one I enjoy because it replaces the EN at the start of endurance with just an X, and for no reason. No one knows why they did this. It makes no sense, but it's pretty extreme. And it's meant to. This is in lieu of a proper introduction for me. This is the kind of thing you can expect from any content of mine. But yeah, EverQuest Next. Woo!
Yeah.
I haven't read any of the lore books, and I don't know anything about EverQuest lore. So I'm essentially here as just a sort of dancing monkey to, I don't know, maybe ask the stupid questions.
All right. And of course, I am Legendary Neurotoxin. I do a lot of broadcasts for a lot of games. Half of it's Landmark, and some of that's talk shows and tour and review with content and creations. And so I'm at H1Z1. I actually had the community manager on Dead Feature Rant this week, which is totally awesome. All sorts of other stuff going on. Just hit up my channel. Of course, a lot of you are already here. So anyhow, so gonna go around the rest of the room with everybody. What's everybody else drinking? I got the Dwarves White Label with a couple ice cubes because that helps actually make it kind of taste a little better. Phantom X, how about you?
Just some wine. Whatever my wife.
Red or white? Are you a red man or are you a white man?
White wine. She has red though. Whatever it is. It's alcohol. So.
There you go.
It comes in a box, and I pull it out.
Yeah, actually, it is in a box.
See,
There you
aha.
It
There's some
holds
good
it.
box wine. I will not hold that against
The
you.
best way. There's a recession on. Is being smart.
Yeah. I have nothing to drink at all. If I start like coughing up dust later throughout the podcast, it's because I didn't prepare enough time to walk out of my room, grab a drink, and come back. But I am here anyways. So
Oh, we had
If you
2
see me
minutes of
reaching up
awkward
with it,
silence for that.
I've
Oh,
at least
well.
got water, so.
There you go. And I also have in the backup some, oops, not that one. I got 2 of the same kind of mug. Some coffee.
Nice. Yeah,
All right.
so I am just happy to like be in the community again today because like I don't know, everybody probably knows with the baby stuff. He's not awake right now, or I would show him off to everybody. But baby made it healthy, happy, alive. We had to battle doctors a little bit, but we got to do things the way we wanted to, and he's doing really good. So baby, we named him Zachariah. So he's here, and I'm happy to be settling back in everything. I'm not in the twilight zone of waiting anymore, so I'm excited to be back here. So thank you guys for your like thoughts, prayers, and wishes. I think they helped.
Did you try and convince her
Baby
to
Z.
name your? Yeah, Baby
There you
Z.
go.
Did you convince to have a dark elf name at all in there? Did you try at least once or twice to throw out some like
I-
lore-specific names, little Coil and Larkos? No,
I've
probably
tried some
your son
crazy
for that,
names, and
actually.
the wife has shot them down the last 2. So the third time I didn't even try it.
Just
Yeah.
smart.
Not even an errant apostrophe somewhere in the middle, just to give it that elfy spin.
I should have done that. I'm gonna do that.
I-
If we have 4, I'll keep
Yeah.
that in mind. I'll keep the apostrophe. I gotta at least do that
Well,
next time.
I believe in you. I know that you can do it.
At least you get to say I didn't get to name my kids. So, yeah.
Dang.
Sad times. Oh, you're right.
All right.
I haven't even got any. I've got a dog called Dave.
Oh.
Where is he? He's around.
So today, you guys, lore is kind of the topic today. It's gonna lead us really into everything, but I know the lore is out there. People right now, it's like only in the form of books, which like people like myself who are writers and readers might not hate that, but I know it's not for everybody. And I do actually do a show with Giovanni Viz Gaming on his channel every Wednesday usually. We haven't had it the last couple weeks because of baby and he's moving and stuff this week, but we're gonna reboot that probably next week. And that's like we do that to kind of cover the lore in general and kind of get people who haven't read the books some info on it. So if you guys want really detailed stuff on the lore, go check that out. But today we're gonna just kind of like talk general impressions for people who have read the lore, and maybe for the people who haven't read any lore at all, which we have a couple people like, ask like whatever questions you guys might have, because I think like really like what they're doing with this, like this is the way they've chosen to really like set the foundation for the game for everybody. So I don't know like what you guys think about design decisions for that. So tell me what you guys think. I guess we'll go to Chad first. Go ahead and tell us, like, I don't know, kind of give us your background about what you think about the lore and what you've read and stuff.
So first off, I really like how it's being created as a tabula rasa for the new game, a blank slate, in more than one way. First, of course, it's a reboot from past series. So if you didn't play EverQuest 1, didn't play EverQuest 2, if you're like Locke and only killed Fippy Darkpaw, you still can matter when it comes to EverQuest Next and lore. You have time to catch up. I also like the fact that it's more of like a blank slate for the characters themselves, that the gods, like in past series, aren't necessarily guiding the world left and right every turn. The character and how he chooses to go about his time in the game could have just as much effect as a god, so essentially giving the power to the player. And I really like that about the game so far, at least from what we've heard. I also think it's really cool that there's not necessarily like a dichotomy between good and evil, that kind of every god has its pluses, every god has its minuses, and every kind of faction will too. So it's more like who you identify with or who you want to identify with you in the lore, rather than, oh, I want to be a good guy or I want to be a bad guy. I think that's really cool too. That's all I have to say so far about my first impressions about the lore. Yeah.
That was good. I
No.
enjoyed that.
Thank you guys. Thank you very much.
I go to it. Oh, I
Yeah,
agree completely.
So,
From the little that I know, I think that moving away from a very kind of binary morality system, like especially in other games, you tend to have, you'll have 2 or 3 different factions, and it's very much this, it's a limited system that's always like oppositional and very kind of confrontational in that way. But I think having a more kind of fluid morality in that way automatically lends itself to more interesting lore. And that's something I'm interested in exploring with all of you gentlemen tonight, if you're into that kind of thing.
All I know is that
Yes, no,
I'm
just wondering.
especially
all of a sudden I need a
excited.
drink.
I'm especially excited to pretty much be trying to shut down the High Elves and the Dark Elves at every opportunity in EverQuest Next. Based on the lore, I've got no reason to like them. I hate them. They suck. They're jerks. So I'm pretty much going to try to screw them over at every opportunity. And that's more or less it. Oh, and I'm going to play at Karen. I knew that before I read the Karen lore book, but afterward it's like, yep, definitely playing a Karen.
But see, Legendary, should you judge elves based on the deeds of their past forefathers? I think you should kind of give them time. That was long ago in the history. If you look into the vast kind of eras and epochs that they're giving us so far, I think Velix. When was the Doll Empire at its highest? I'm gonna
The
test you now.
Talking Stage, yeah, they have a huge storyline, there's actually a huge image of the storyline, and they updated it from like past SOE Live to add some new stuff. So it is a really big era, and I like that the guys have touched on it so far about not having like truly defined good and evil. Like there's some gray in every race. Like every race has potential. Evil and good in them, which I think is really cool and really important, especially for like in today's world where people are a lot more open and familiar to with PvP and being at odds with other players. I mean that's kind of, if you look at the market today, I mean like with the MOBAs and all that stuff, there's so many players playing games that are comfortable and enjoy confrontational stuff. So I think that giving players like an actually hard-boiled in way to be at odds is really cool, because especially for role players that like you want to get in there, you don't want to have to like pull crap out, make stuff up, pull crap out of your hat to be like, oh, this is why I'm a bad guy. So it's really cool. I'm a big fan of that.
I was interested. Reese just reminded me of something actually. The idea of like the elves as a whole being jerks. I think. Sorry to talk about design in this show, but I remember when I was. I've heard from the Storybricks guys that the idea of one particular race being like a complete blanket thing isn't really part of EverQuest Next. Like everything's much more compartmentalized. So you could have one group of elves that like we're all right and we're kind of we're on your side and you were friendly with, but then another group in another part of the world who you were at odds with. And I think creating that kind of fluidity is just really interesting, because it's something that always kind of bugged me in RPGs. It's like this race is every single one of them is categorically against you in every instance, apart from maybe one character that they shove into the story just to be like, oh my god, like they could be good after all, if only, but they're not, because that's how the game works. I think it's nice. I think it's a step in a good direction.
Let me, I guess, be a little clear. The High Elf Empire and the Dark Elf Empire. That's who I got my beef with.
Yeah, sure. I just thought it was an interesting.
Yeah, we want to take over the world. That's just how it is. I thought it was cool actually.
What's up?
I was interacting. Shaylin wrote her Ask the Druid. I can't remember. It was some email exchange we had, but I kind of like made a joke about Dark Elves, but I realized it was kind of twisted actually, because like the Dark Elves, like I don't know for the people that have like checked the lore stuff and everything, but the Dark Elves can actually turn the other elves they can actually breed them out, like because of the way their spirit works and why they are dark elves, like if all their offspring, even if it's like a good elf and a dark elf and another elf, when they have offspring, it's always a dark elf. So it's like it's kind of twisted. It's like this, I
Wow.
don't know, almost like Hitlerist purging of the weak, kind of like it's pretty crazy. I can see why they're
Do
kind of personified as evil still.
would the dark elves like consider themselves like the superior form of elves? Then is that something that they think? Do they consider other elves to be lesser, or is that just a
I
genetic
don't
thing?
know. Like, I think because they have that like inner spirit unlocked or whatever it is that makes them dark elves from Umbra, from Umbra. But also, I mean, these are like the Marines of the Elven army. They're like the special forces. They have a superiority complex. They're probably pretty arrogant. So I'm pretty sure that ingrained in them in Umbra and just festered and boiled. They're probably not nice guys, but at the same time, I mean, like despite their personality traits, they did like sacrifice their lives basically for like the greater good of everyone. So it's like that's what I love. It's like even like the most personifiedly evil race in the game basically it's like, hey, they can be good guys too. So I don't know. It's kind of cool. I really think
I
like
know.
it seems
I
from the
like that because it's. Sorry, carry on.
no go ahead.
I was just thinking it's kind of nice that even like you said the race that's meant to be the evil ones, it's like really, they gave it all up and everything, but it's like they're the bad guys just because they're kind of jerks about it now. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you saved the world, and now you've got to rub it in our face every time. Oh, you went to Dragonland, and you were willing to give up everything. And like, yeah, we get it, and I quite like that. Just the idea. It's almost a more kind of it's a more sort of narcissistic approach to being, as far as law goes. It's like a narcissism rather than this kind of objective idea of what evil is. That's another thing that's never really sat right with me. The idea of a race that just wanted just wanted like horrible things to happen. It's like, why? How does that sense of morality ever become entrenched in a race? Whereas I think with the dark elves, you can kind of see how they've arrived where they've got to.
I agree. I think it's really cool. Back when they were doing the Dark Elf workshops, they were talking a lot about how, when they left the plane and when they returned, that they had this kind of grotesque deformation on their face. And it was that and their new color skin and their dragon horns that made people kind of shun them from society. So where before even the Talkish or Elvish society would have welcomed them back, they even put them off at that time. So I guess that's like they grew their anger out of mistrust, I guess, out of isolation. The fact that they were cut off, they were building these giant structures, and the sense of their architecture all kind of screams that they want to be heard, that they are artistic, that they do have all these special qualities to them. But at the same time, they're perceived evil. So I don't even know if they would be like kind of standoffish unless we're a perpetrator. Well, maybe everyone was a perpetrator of sending them off, but maybe if I'm a Karen and I go up to the Dark Elves, they'll be like, "Hey, kitty cat, get on over here. It's cool. It's cool. We don't hate you so much."
That's an important point that you make, because really, like, if you look at all the races that the mortal races that exist in the lore at the time of the Dragon War, which is basically like the major events that happened prior to us like going in game in like real time. So like they're fighting the Shissar, the Shissar enemies, reptilian. The dragons are enemies that are reptilian, and then the dragons, in order to match the numbers to actually compete against all the mortal races, even though they didn't have their high magic, they had to get like all these other dragon type, serpent type creatures. So like when the dark elves go to Umbra and get some of these appearances, it's like, okay, the entire world has spent like the last millennia fighting these reptilian creatures, and then all of a sudden the dark, like, these elves come back and they look reptilian-ish, and they're like, yeah, no, we're actually these guys. And they're like, yeah, screw you, buddy. I should probably kill you right now. So it's definitely this like deep-seated subconscious like mistrust, I think.
Yeah, it's racial, definitely, like racial tension, not just oh you killed my father. Like I don't know, what you guys were saying earlier, returning to the fact like in past games the lore is so linear that it's some simple plot that's going down and you're just part of it. Even like Rift, it's a big MMO and they've expanded it, but the original plot for the entire MMO was very linear. Like this is how it was going to happen and you were going to fight it off in the beginning. It's definitely something that I know when I talk to fellow hosts and when we talk about, like, we've been playing a lot of Project Gorgon, just the fact that you're starting off with more of a blank slate and not kind of put into a certain position. You can kind of define who you are in the world. I think that's fantastic. That's probably one of the number one things that I'm looking forward to when it comes to EverQuest Next. And hopefully they can do it, because so far we haven't seen much other than a couple simple demos, but we'll see.
I mean, Tanlin the badass cow, that's so awesome.
Milking everybody.
Yeah.
That's such a ridiculous game. I love that game. Yeah, it's fantastic.
That's what I've been more. I like that the change has sort of been the delivery system, how they're looking at changing just how you get the lore. Because it's great to put all this time and effort behind everything, but the way I see it is if you don't present it in a way that people want to read it or want to see it, they're just not going to. They're going to care more about how much damage they're doing and how they're, being able to deliver it in a different way, which is I think what they're doing. The books are great. Just even doing that. Now I like to be in the game as I'm learning of the lore. So I've read some of the books, not all of them, probably for that reason. But just even that way, that how they're starting, rather than you're going to their website and you see a brief paragraph on or background that the way they're delivering it is I think a positive change too.
It is.
I think that.
Yeah, there's a lot of. Oh, go ahead. No, Yusuf, this is your show. You go first, Sherlock. I don't
you're the guest.
Me later.
You're the guest. I was just.
If you let Chad and me talk today, we will talk the whole show because this is like what we love. So yeah, just shut us up and talk.
I'm trying to latch on to the topics that I can get involved with, and it was just the way that Scott mentioned the delivery system of the lore. I think it's really interesting. For what we know about EverQuest Next, that the current context of any environment that you're in, like the specific power struggle that you will be involved in any area that you're in North will actually be important. So as a player in the world, it's in your best interest to understand the relationships between different groups, because if you want to be a min-maxer, if you care about, maximizing the efficiency of your time, then it is in your best interest to know that stuff. And I think that's really interesting, because I'd like a little bit more context in my MMO, not just kill 10 of X because whatever. I don't read the quest text, so I don't know why.
Well, and let's be honest, how many?
Yeah.
Yeah, how many times? I mean, how many people have actually put the energy? Like thinking back to EverQuest or EverQuest 2, how many people have actually taken the time to go collect all the different little books and actually read them in the game? Probably not that many. Not that they wouldn't be interested. That's just I don't think it's delivered the right way within the game setting. I think that should still be part of it, but not all of it. So that's what I hope they're changing.
I think that's a good add-on,
go on to Locke,
but as the main delivery.
I was going to say to go on to Locke, to build on to Locke's point is what he was talking about, how the power struggles matter more now, because I mean if you think about the way other MMOs have done these bigger overarching storylines of factions and stuff, people didn't care about factions. It was a gate, it was a gate to content. If I want to do this, I need to have faction like this. So it was like it wasn't as important, whereas like now, with the story totally ingrained, having those knowing what's happening in the factions and participating matters beyond just like as a content gate. It's actually, it actually is the content, and the story's just woven, hardwired directly into the game, which is a huge difference. I mean, MMOs, there hasn't been one that's really, done it in that way in a long time.
I was thinking back in EverQuest 1, they had a faction system, and it would kind of automatically make certain NPCs indifferent towards you, to even maybe attack you because they might be at war with another faction at one point. And it was pretty stagnant, but I think every now and then they would actually kind of switch it up and say, oh, something's changing in the lore. Now if I'm an ogre and walk into the city, they'll own me. Unless unless I do something right to build the right faction with them and rep. And that's kind of an early sort of iteration of this, because now we're talking about story bricks being in the game and us actually affecting the future of the storyline, other than, you know, devs pushing buttons every now and then. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. But going back to content delivery, what I want to ask everybody, what is your kind of favorite mode of content to delivery in an MMO? What would you like to see in EverQuest Next be the primary way that information is disseminated to you?
I personally like cutscenes and voiceovers.
That's cool. Are we
For me-
talking in terms of delivery? Do we mean like lore
yeah, like
delivery,
in
like
game,
story?
like questing, story? Yeah, I guess story in the meta. But for me, what I'm looking forward to in EverQuest Next is kind of still speculation, but it's the ability for more emotion on NPCs. You know, the storyline can deliver itself to me in the face of an NPC now. You know, I don't necessarily have to see quest text above them to see what's going on. I can see them run and them scream and shout, and I could see, you know, discontent or fear on their face, and that might prompt me to go ask them questions and things like that. So for me, I think that's what I'm looking forward to most, keeping it in the world, not taking it out. I think cutscenes can be beneficial, but at the same time, I think there's ways to do it where I can kind of control the cutscene, like let my character kind of take part in the bigger cutscene around me. You use the world itself to kind of guide the storyline.
You know, that actually there's something you had mentioned earlier that I kind of want to leverage off of, and kind of follows off of that a little bit. The whole kill 10 rats, or like, you know, collect 10 you know, hides or 10 bear butts or whatever. I'm okay with those so long as when you actually get there with the bear butts or hides or whatever, the NPC then goes and starts using them. They throw the bear butts on the grill. They actually start using the hide to start making the tents and stuff, and it starts increasing the housing in the area. That's the sort of thing that I'd like to see. Don't make it arbitrary, make it meaningful. If someone asks you to kill, you know, kill 10 rats, that's a big deal. If someone asks you to bring, you know, 20 logs or whatever, that's a big deal. That's the infrastructure being built up and repaired, and if you or someone else doesn't do it, things are going to deteriorate further, and potentially, you know, over time, if more and more people don't heed the call and help out with those things, and the NPCs themselves can't go out and do it, the place is going to deteriorate. It's going to become a crap shack, and then, you know, trade's going to reduce. They might get attacked by bandits more readily. So, you know, that sort of stuff is going to be pretty important.
That'd be fantastic.
See, for me, like, as far as what I would want from like the way content's delivered, it hasn't really existed in you know, graphical games before for me, because I don't know, I came from a background, you know, of like role playing in like AOL chat rooms, you know, with like fantasies, you know, Forgotten Realms, that kind of stuff, D&D. So like for me, like getting the story and participating in the bigger story, like I like to get it from other players, because like, you know, they've got all kinds of interesting ideas that like, you know, you can't predict. Like, you, like when you get a story from a developer, you know, like you might be able to see things changing or try to predict the story, but when you're just like interacting with other people, you never know where it's going to go, you know, the next second. It's so, you know, it's somewhat edge of your seat all the time, I guess. You know, that's not a good way to say it, but I mean, it's like, it's always interesting, always fresh. So like before EverQuest Next, this concept that they have now where like people are participating and changing the story, like everybody's writing the big story together, kind of. It's like, it hasn't existed before. You know, it has in MUDs and stuff, but like not like this. Like it's never been like this. That's why I'm so excited about this game, because it's like really infusing story back in.
Well, I think we actually, some of us talked about it at SOE Live, was just how cool it was to see the lore guys with the Storybook guys on a panel, and how involved they actually are together because of, well, kind of what you're talking about. I think that shows a lot of promise on delivery. And as far as what
it seems.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Scott. No, you go.
I was going to say, as far as, you know, I like a little bit of everything. I don't want all cutscenes. The big thing that I would like is to be able to come back later and actually go back through it. Whatever it's given to me, to actually be able to go back when I have more time, when I'm not with 5 other people that are trying to get one thing done, and actually take the time to go back over everything and not have to re-level a different character and go through it all. Although we won't be doing that in this game, but You get what I'm saying?
Something else I'm really looking forward to is, and it's kind of one of the keystones of this game, Shadows of Mordor, coming up, is the idea that if you fight something and you defeat it, or it defeats you, and you fight it again, there's going to be that memory, because story bricks will be built in. Yes, of course, you've already fought the person, you've already talked to them. So instead of it being the same static conversation, the same interaction that you would have the first time you met him versus the 10th time you met him, as you would in any other MMO. This time, the second time you meet them, they'll know. It'll be, hey, you're that dude who stole my eye and mangled my arm. Now I've got
You
my
bastard.
I've got fireballs coming out of my eyes and laser arm, and now I'm coming after you. So you beat him again, and you're like, all right, well, now I've got my junk replaced with this fancy humping spike here, so I'm about to jump on your face, or whatever the enemy does. So that's the sort of thing that I'm interested in, is seeing the repeated appearances of things that you fought before, and potentially them even hunting you down later on.
I think it's with the idea of RPGs. It's interesting, like Vel was saying about when you're doing when you've got a pen and paper role playing going on, when it's about a kind of collaborative storytelling experience with other players. That's the real kind of powerful role playing game thing. That's what all of this was born out of. And I think, Chad, you were absolutely right when you were talking about in the original EverQuest how occasionally the devs would just mix it up a little bit and just shake up what was happening in the world in terms of the way that things reacted to create that kind of living world experience. And I think, honestly, for all RPGs, you can kind of see that's always been the goal, is to have a world that is really reacts to what you do, and that you can exist in and affect real change in. And one of the things that made me so excited about this project is the idea of story bricks, that can, so as a player you can affect that kind of change in a meaningful way for what feels to me like the first time in this kind of MMO, that's very story driven at the same time. And I'm super excited personally. I think it's it's all moving in that direction, isn't it? And it's cool. I like it.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to derail Velix's lore discussion into a design discussion around story bricks, but
No, that's
That's
the show.
it was
That's
my
the
plan
show.
all along.
But yeah, content delivery. I think. I mean, just looking at the system that they're building, there's a lot of pluses to it. We don't really know how feasible it is yet. We don't know what kind of promises they're actually going to be delivering on. But from all the hype that they're talking about, and from the demo they even showed at SOE Live, it looks fantastic. That was only on a faction level. Oh, if I wipe the elves completely out of Amaryl, this will happen, and they'll fight back. Just imagine when it's on that smaller personal level or a group level. If I'm grouped with Locke, and Locke decided to piss off the elves with legendary neurotoxin, well, maybe we group together and we go into an elven city and they kill me because of it. Maybe they torture them and they just wipe me out right to start with because of their decisions. So there's so much interplay going on that I think this is the closest you might ever get to kind of that true player-driven experience, Alex, of what you've had in the past in chat rooms and things like that, because my choices couldn't necessarily really affect you, and the game can kind of automatically see that and then give you that information without me having to be creative. I can be a consumer, because that's what it is. It's, do I want to be a producer in this environment, or do I just want to sit back like I'm watching TV, enjoy a good story, and just kind of consume it? And you can't really force players into either role, because they're going to want to do what they want to do. But Storybricks makes it able to where a producer can produce and a consumer can consume and have it affect each other. Because if I take all the bare butts off that vendor, maybe that village starts to somehow die because they need their bare butts to live. Well, if you're not producing those bare butts, they could also die. So we can both affect the situation. I think that's amazing. Really, really cool.
I think it definitely adds a whole new. It turns it into a whole new beast as far as awareness goes. Because when you're in the world, you can't just be. I mean, in the way that they're designing EverQuest Next, just the theory behind it and the mechanics that we've seen so far, the world's literally. You're gonna have to pay attention to everything going on around you. If you don't, you don't necessarily have to. You can just breeze through and walk through. But if you want to exhibit some type of control on the environment around you, you're going to have to be aware of what's happening and know how to act. Whereas in other games, like you could probably literally, in a lot of other games out there, just, walk through following your arrows and not have to pay attention to anything other than what was directly in front of your face. But like now, it's a totally different beast. So it's definitely something that's different, like wildly different. And the fact that it's on this scale, like it's really interesting to me, because when you're doing like, a tabletop role play group, there's like 4 of you, and it's just those people. But when you have like tons, like hundreds of players, possibly thousands on your server, like changing things up, and whole guilds probably pushing to do certain objectives of their own, that is like, it's just crazy. Like, I don't know, it's definitely interesting, because all the major like factions and the major, different things that have existed in past MMOs haven't been able to be active, like they have their set goals that stay the same. But when you have, 40, 50 people that can collectively together push actively and change their goals on the fly, the whole world's going to be very dynamic. Just off what they've shown us so far.
May I derail, but back onto the original topic, because I'm interested. Like, I'm as a player, like I said, I'm very excited about this idea of a dynamic world and players affecting change. And like Velix was saying, it's about players getting together and making decisions about what they want to happen in the world. And I'm interested, for the lore people on the panel, for the people that know a billion times more than I do, what does that mean for what the established lore means to EverQuest Next? If players have so much agency and are able to affect the world in such direct ways, what does that do to our notion of what lore is, really?
Well, the one of the things they've done so far is a lot of background to set up the stage, I guess is the best way to say it, so that when we go, like, and they have things in there with the rallying calls and ways to guide the story along a major, like big story arc, but all the details as to how that happens or how we get from A to B to C, is totally dependent on what we do collectively. So I mean, definitely the agency that they give people, is going to determine like the real history of the world, as far as like all the details about it and who are the heroes in any given battle and all that stuff. But as far as lore writing goes, I mean, like, I'm actually super excited, because I mean, and it was something that I think Steve Denuser, when he came into Loregasm a couple weeks ago, we talked about it. Like, it was just a briefly touched topic. We were talking mostly Rosong, but of people actually expressing the interest to be writing lore, like fan fiction, that might actually get canonized if it passes their criteria. So it's like the lore, it's basically this this inverted pyramid of content creation, not unlike what they're doing with Landmark, and that can be even in the story too. So I mean, it's really interesting. But I definitely, they are going to have their writers, and they plan to, keep using writers to, give background. Because if you look at the timeline, there's that whole Lost era. They have that as like this open era where they can really, have anything in there if they want to like add a content update. Basically, we're going to add some new type of content to the game. They can use a writer to release a book, and then they can add this new world or this new faction into the game, and it just is going to shake up everything. So I mean, as far as lore goes, I don't think like they're going to be planning to do lore in such a way that what we do is going to change. What we're going to do is going to change something that already exists. They're just going to set foundations for us with it. Is my experience so far.
So it's like it's more of a wind it up and let it go sort of situation where it's all in the preparation.
It's kind of like a big adventure storybook, they're limiting your options a bit, but at the same time, they're saying, hey, if you go on the forums and say, hey, you don't really like this part of the book, we can just release a new book to what you like, or we can take what you're doing in the game and kind of create new stories. But I think what Velix said about the past being so big, I mean, think of the lore as not progressing just into the future, but in the past, because we're set in this Combine era where there's no kind of guaranteed future, but behind us is 3 other eras with like 4 ages each. Like the Calderan, I'm looking at the list, so don't think this is coming out of the top of my head here. I don't.
You don't have to lie.
Maybe
you don't have to lie.
Velix can do that. So the Calderian age era is like the farthest back, and there's 4 ages. There's the Age of Awakening, Balance, Exploration, Decline. Then after that, we go into the Lost Era, which is the Age of Ruin and the Age of Strife. Then we get into the Dahl Era, which is the Era of the Elves. So the Age of Ascension, the Age of Allies, the Shishar War, and then the Talkish Age is after that. And that's all the lore we've gotten up to this point as far as like going back in time. So there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 8, 9 eras that are just sitting, or ages, sorry, 8, 9 ages that are just sitting there waiting for exploration. So we're not only going to be discovering our future, but we're going to be discovering our past when it comes to EverQuest Next. And I think that's big for lore people and collective lore.
And landmark people, that's going to be the other big thing.
Yeah.
A lot of that content down there, they're going to give us style guides for how they want us to design some of the key places that we're going to interact with as players. And this is stuff that they've said, if all goes by plan, we oftentimes won't see any of the stuff that we ourselves create and get accepted and have put in the game, except maybe once, or maybe catch somebody else's in. It's like, oh, I saw Neuro working on this or whatever. It's awesome. I'm gonna send him a message. So that's the thing that I think is really, really awesome, is that you fight your way down through the layers of depth. You're smelling the magma down below. You're pretty close, and all of a sudden you come across this overturned temple from the third age or whatever, going way back. And you start finding stuff in there. You might not be able to use all of it. You might not be able to read all of it and learn all of it your first time there. But you'll be able to maybe take some stuff back that you're going to be able to start learning some of the stuff from that age, or maybe even find like basically ancient crafting materials and be able to use it to create or restore a particular item. So that's the sort of stuff that's going to be really awesome.
I hate to jump in just
really
one more
works
time.
as well, doesn't it?
Go ahead, Lon.
Sorry.
No, it's cool. No, it's all right.
I was going to say the idea of discovering the past really works with the layers of depth in the world as well. Like the kind of 3D nature, the fact that so much of the world is underground really kind of lends itself to that. And I'm excited about the idea of discovering things that no one else has seen. Exploration, how about that?
Yeah, and it drives the lore, because, I mean, there's this meta story, and then there's the collective story. So what Legendary was even saying is that even adds an extra layer. By me knowing that, oh, Legendary was working on this, and I can be like, hey, group member, did you know this about the game? And then all of a sudden, there's a whole new avenue of knowledge for them to kind of digest and know. Velix might find that hidden temple. I might not even know how to get the hell there. So just by me talking with him, communicating with him, and sharing the story, then that opens up more avenues. The game itself doesn't necessarily have to dictate so many different storylines to you, because your friends in this emergent world can kind of create the storyline as they go. They don't have to have all the lore about that hidden temple there. I mean, they could just have little clues here, and what you decide the temple is and spread with your friends could become the lore or the collective lore of the game, and maybe become the established narrative over time, depending on how well how good they're at with keeping up with the community and the game at large and updating it. I mean, but yeah, super cool.
Yeah, so
someone else is going to jump in there.
That's why I put in this for this episode lore, story, and content, because I mean, never before has a game at this size and scale and kind of put the three together in such a way where there's so many paths, like you said, with explorers actually finding stuff that nobody's found before. Like, they actually have so much value and they can feel so important by just exploring, which in other MMOs, like, you get achievements maybe by exploring things, but you don't generally get to go somewhere and say like, oh, I was the first person to find this. Like, everybody eventually goes there, but like, yeah. I mean, there's so many paths, but really, like, the reason that I have lore on here, even though we're not really talking super lore, is that, the content of the game, the delivery methods, are through the lore, and they come from the lore, and they come from other players, and players create, like, they're all interconnected. Like, everything, it's not like there's this and there's this. It's like everything's woven together, which it hasn't been. I don't know, I keep saying that. It's probably annoying, but it hasn't been done like this before.
It's never been done.
No, that's the point, isn't it?
They haven't done it yet.
That was it was one of the things in Steve Denuse's blog post on the new roundtable thing about the gods that really caught my eye. It's becoming the SOE are becoming much more confident about saying it about EQN, that this is a different type of game. This isn't like an MMO that you've played before. This is a new type of thing, and I'm so happy to hear them. To hear that they're confident enough to really come out and say that, even though some of it's there's an edge of marketing hyperbole in there. I'm sure that's what they want to say, but
a little bit.
just a little bit, but you can believe it there. I mean, the way that the game is being assembled, there's enough elements, and like we were talking about, the way that the content's delivered to players and the way that players interact with the world fundamentally. I think since they're starting from that point, building on top of that foundation means that they can, it can become something very interesting from a new starting point, which I'm thrilled about. Quite frankly,
we've got about 15 minutes before we start our Q&A session, but I did want to talk about the topic of the Row song today. So, Row song,
that's huge.
I mean, when we did our Lordgasm a couple weeks ago, Steve the Newser came into the chat, and he literally gave us like some stuff that they hadn't told anybody yet, really, about what the Row song is and where it came from. About basically, I'll give you like the quick little, nutshell version of it is that Solasek Row discovered this type of magical power called a Sephir. It was like a concentration of magic. So, he didn't give us too many specifics on that, but Solasek Row, this god of, famous god and famous person in even EverQuest Next, the new one.
Fire and Knowledge.
Yes.
Solasek Row and EverQuest Next, Fire and Knowledge.
So he discovers this. He discovers
how to make a campfire.
This Sephir, and then he gets with the other like major beings that existed on the planet, the dragons, which because Vishan created the dragons, and I'm not sure, but I believe that these seraphs, or the gods, came from the spirit of the Norai, or maybe they're beyond that, just visiting inner world travelers. I'm not sure, but anyhow, he gets with the dragons who exist on Norath to create a book, and they create this book together to so that he can write down and try to figure out high magic, or figure out what this seraph is. And he ends up this seraph, Sephir magic, ends up bonding with the book and makes it intelligent. It gives the book sentience, so this book is now actually a thinking being, and Solasek takes it with him as he explores not just Norath. He explores Norath, and he explores the universe as well, and he brings it all back. And players are going to get a Row song, but it's going to be a copy or like an echo of the original Row song. So we're going to have these like sentient books that are quest journals, basically, kind of like the quest journal you would get like in another game, except it's like a living, breathing book, and it's an active NPC. Like your quest log is going to be an active NPC, which is really it's really weird and interesting, and it's going to connect you to the different moving things in the world and remember what you've done in the past, and maybe lead you back to things that you've done in the past, like remind you who you've been with. So I mean, like that was kind of like the lore bit of it, and it's really interesting because it's tying the meta story directly into our characters. Like, we're not just participating in this big world. Like, the major events that are happening, like the whole universal picture, is being captured in this Row song book with that Solasek made, and we're like have a direct link to it. So that's kind of what we know so far. So I wanted to get what people's opinions, like, what do you want the Row song to do in the game? What do you think it's going to do? How do you want it to work, I guess?
Well,
so
there was an interesting interaction that Jeff Butler had talked about on the Lordgasm show, and it was basically what happens when two Row songs touch. Do you remember what that was, Felix?
There was so much craziness that day. I don't even remember it all. I was trying to write down everything.
It was a Rowgasm.
Oh yeah, the Rowgasm.
Wow, they had a Rowgasm. You dirty folk. I have a question. For those who are at SOE Live, one thing that I've always wondered about Storybricks and Quest Generation is, do they have like text generating abilities? So if you see who Lord Garriot's new MMO is working on, the NPC actually, like with protocols, creates the text as it types to you. It's not just like pre-programmed. So if you say, hey, blah blah blah, it might respond to you differently.
Hold on. Richard Garriott or Lord British, not Lord Garriott.
Sorry, okay. All right. I apologize, nerds. Lord British. Does Storybricks have that technology? Like the Row Song, it's going to feed me information based on what I know. If I'm a bad guy, will it talk to me differently than if I'm a good guy? Will it be like, hey, douche, there's something over here? Instead of, hello, my lord, how are you today? Does anyone know that, or is anyone able to talk to Storybricks about that?
I don't know if the
I
flavor of
asked
the
I asked them
language will be
about it.
different, but-
Well, um, theoretically, it definitely can be, and I think that it's part of the intention of the system that there will be different layers. Like I think originally it was Brian Schwab who was telling me about it. He was saying that the kind of idea was they wanted almost different layers of it. So if someone wanted the kind of immersive RP experience, they could have a very sort of flavorful text with have it like it was speaking to you and telling you the story of your life. But then at the other end, you could maybe change a setting that would just give very factual information for when if you just wanted to kind of scan it. So that's not confirmed or anything. That's the intention of the system. Which says to me they could probably incorporate that if it was something that was possible within the scope of it. I don't know, it sounds like.
Very cool.
But I do have
my
one question.
You guys can...
Yeah. Will it be voiced by Peter Dinklage? Because I heard that's the done thing at the moment, and I was.
I mean, yeah. They got Christopher Lee for EverQuest 2. Luca Delir was Christopher Lee, so
I did that. It was funny.
It's possible.
Anything's possible. It was funny though, because they were talking about these kind of systems like for the Row Song specifically. But it sounded like, at least from Storybricks' end, that was very much the kind of delivery mechanism for everything that was happening in the world around you. Like when I was asking about the way that we'd be interacting with NPCs on that level, like it kind of seemed like they either weren't talking about it or they hadn't quite decided or finished it yet or something. So I think that's something that's still up in the air. I don't know though. Would I do think about that a lot of the time. The idea, like Storybricks, the agency of all these different characters and things. You think, like in your head, you sort of want it to be. You can go into the town and like speak to the baker, and he's got a specific personality. And then you talk to the blacksmith, and she's a burly dwarf maid, and she's looking for a husband, but there's only one dwarf man in town, and she hates him, and that kind of thing. And I mean, that's the kind of thing like Vel was saying about the pen and paper RPGs. You can create these very sort of rich storytelling worlds, and I wonder, where, like, how far into that grey area it's gonna lie.
Yeah, I think it's possible.
I don't want to get ahead of myself.
That's been, I just hope they don't make it simple. I mean, based off of what they're wanting to collect, like everything you've done in the past, there's a lot you can do with that. A lot of stuff, and I just hope it's not kind of a dumbed down, some text that just tells you what. There's a lot that you can get out of that I hope they put into it.
My hope is that, because I know like they want it to be something familiar for people that are MMO players, that are used to guides. They want to have that guide feature for somebody maybe who's a first time gamer even. There's people who played, what was their first MMO. This could be somebody's first MMO, so they want people to have a guide, But I'm just hoping that it's really elegant in that it doesn't just point you, like, I hope it requires people to think a little bit. Like, it's gonna give you information and stuff, but it's not gonna, direct you, like, hold your hand, because I think that's not as wanted as a lot of people, I don't know, might think is. I don't know about how developers think.
I had the same question out of SOE Live when they kind of brought back the Row Song from last year's SOE Live to talk about it a little bit. And one of the biggest things was in Guild Wars 2, they kind of had that the world story and the guide story. You'd walk in an area and, here's all the quests available. I can talk to this guy, I can kill. It just automatically gave you the quest. And I was wondering, is Row Song going to be like that? Am I going to see, orcs are attacking here? Am I going to run down there and it's going to be like 0 out of 5 orcs killed, 0 out of 6 orcs killed? I think the easiest answer to that is Storybricks is different. If I kill the orc, it's not just going to respawn necessarily. But secondly, I think it was Horror Sorceress was able to ask Dave for me at the pool party a little about that and asking how complicated, how deep it can actually be to allow for more agency. And he said the Rosong can even lie to you. So I think that's a really good point, is that even the information I may be receiving from this kind of quest guide might not actually be accurate. It could be a trap. It could be a taunt. It depends on the sentience of the Rosong, I guess, and how it's feeling that kind of day.
It's also,
at least that was the idea.
It can potentially be screwing with you based on like how much of a jerk you've been. If you're not screwing around, then it'll probably be a little bit more accurate. But if you're like just a total evil person, it's going to do what it can to screw you over. And I think at that point you've already realized, I don't need to listen to this damn book. I'm my own asshole. So I'm going to go out in the world and wreck things.
I mean, it's a magical book. Maybe your magical energy is off-putting towards it. So if I have a darker soul, the book itself kind of turns towards the dark. I mean, that could be cool.
Well, mechanically, something like that is important because from the way that the world is being designed, like players are going to have so much power and agency to literally do what they want with the world that along with rallying calls and the Rosong, it's going to have to going to have to be mechanics that kind of keep people at least on together in some form, because other words, like you'll have certain trolls out there that are just gonna wreck everything or try to undermine every single thing that people do, and I think there's enough of those people out there that they could seriously slow things down unless there were things in there like that, which I think is really clever to do. It's not just like this wall, you can't hurt other players. It's a clever way of doing it where now, if you want to be a jerk, the Rosong, which wants something specific in the world for the greater good of everybody, is going to say, I'm not going to help this guy because he's not doing what I want the world to do. So it's really cool. It's like
they're turning lore into an anti-griefing device.
I'm just imagining the hate that would be on the forums the first time someone got in for the very first time and it says, hey, go kill these rats over here, and it actually leads them to like a clan of orcs that just destroys them.
Oh, that would be so awesome. I think it's really
funny,
cool.
It's a point I always seem to come back to. It's interesting when, like you mentioned about Guild Wars 2, the way you go into an area and it tells you everything that's going on, and it puts the orange circles and everything on your mini map, and people were kind of annoyed about that because it was sold as this experience of a dynamic world that you'd go out into and interact with, and it was funny how the developer version of it before they put it in the players' hands was very much like there wasn't really anything on the map. Like you went out and things were happening, like the centaurs were burning down a town, so you got involved and stopped the centaurs, and then it was like there were people in the town asking you for help, but then there was the centaur camp, and it was this kind of, but you had to sort of look at the world and see what was going on, and players hated it. They hated that. So first, they had to put in those hearts because people didn't know where to go, and then they had to put in the scouts so people could go and talk to the scouts, and the scouts would tell them where the hearts were.
That's true.
And then it got to the point,
area.
Yeah, and then people got confused because people thought that the hearts were the quest hubs, and that was like the quest, and you just went from heart to heart to heart, and the developers were like, oh no, now we need to show them where the actual events are, so then the orange circles got added, and it was weird how there was this kind of purity of vision from the developers who I think tried hard. Like they were obviously, you can see the sort of restrictions that they had, but they wanted it to be a very open and dynamic experience of players just going off into the world, but it was actually the players who ultimately forced them to remove that. And it's I don't know.
But
it's
I think
a fine line, isn't it?
No, I think that's a great point. I think it can be controlled though within the rhetoric of the designer themselves and the way they perpetuate the gameplay. And even Guild Wars, it's a race to max level. It's whoever can complete things first to get to rating. If you, as a designer, kind of set forth your game as sort of a blank slate, that there are no levels like EverQuest Next is doing, that there's no end game, then there's not necessarily a rush to find content. You have to make it fun to explore. And if it's fun to explore and group with your friends and there's enough to do within your small little area, then I don't think I should ever have to travel across the sea to go to the Cairn Isles if I don't want to. Like, make it fun for me as a player, and kind of keep telling your player base that this is how the game's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a slower game. This isn't WoW 2.0. And then maybe we can see a change. But you're right. It has to be intuitive. It has to be it can't be completely difficult to where I want to log off out of confusion. It's a fine line. Not many games have been able to do it.
You made an interesting, what you just said there brought something to my head that I don't know if it's noticed as much, or we consciously recognize it, but one different thing about EverQuest Next is we're not going to have to do any specific quest in the game. We're not going to have to do this to do, yes, if we want to, become a necromancer, we're going to maybe need to talk to a certain person, but from the way they've talked about things, you can get, classes from more than one person, or you can unlock things from different people. So it's really creating different avenues to where there's never going to be something that you do in the game that you have to do, and everyone who plays the game has also had to do at some point to do some certain thing. So I think that's an interesting element, because to my knowledge, every other MMO that I've played, there are definitely things in there and quests you do that no matter what, everybody else has to do them at some point. And that is not going to be the case with EverQuest Next. I mean, at least to what we know so far. I mean, that there might be,
it's
but
one of the reasons that I am so optimistic about it. Like I was saying earlier on, they're starting from a different foundation. So actually, a lot of those decisions that the designers of Guild Wars 2 were kind of forced to make about the way they delivered their content, those avenues aren't really open for EverQuest Next. They can't put an orange circle in the same area, and they can't really put a scout in. And if they did, they'd always be moving anyway. So what
exactly
what would be the point of that? And I mean, not saying it's not saying it's automatically going to be perfect because of that, but I think at least it's another step towards that kind of dynamic thing where it has to be that way. It's like forcing the developer's hand. They've got no real choice at this point, I suppose. Oh, so
yeah, but even when quests were linear, I mean, in EverQuest, I was younger at the time, of course, but I didn't play it for progression at all. It was this new world in front of me, and I just explored. I would sit around and talk to people. I'd be level 13, they'd be level 30 something, and I didn't even care about that back then. So it's definitely kind of a generational kind of theme that WoW, I think, kind of started and perpetuated over the years. There's a chance we can get back to the adventure MMO. At least I believe so. I hate to bring up Gorgon again, but if you guys play that game, that's a game that I kind of want to sit back and just explore.
It's so true.
I'm constantly getting new things, and it's not guided. You can't guide it that much, because then if I know what to do, of course, we're gamers. I'm going to always look for the cheat in a way. If you make it easy for me to find that cheat, then I'm going to do it, and then everyone's going to do it. You got to keep it open.
It's just the path of least resistance, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
players are always going to take it if it's an option. We're human beings, and I think the majority of people will do. For me, I think you're right. I think the WoW style of game making, and it's ironically one of the things that made it so successful, I think, was the real kind of goal orientated gameplay, where it was always you're always after the shiny, after the shiny, after the shiny. It's happening. Absolutely. It's so funny. It's happening with Destiny at the moment. I see so much chatter from people on Twitter who are playing it and going, "Oh God, it's so horrible. I hate it. I played for 8 hours today because I need a new helmet." And it's exactly the same thing as that kind of, I don't know, the shiny based motivation.
It's like a stick and carrot. Yeah, you're holding that carrot in front of someone's face, and they're going to keep going for it. Absolutely. But then again, I'm a firm believer that MMOs, even though they cost a lot of money, should kind of refine their approach and find ways to not necessarily be generic pieces of crap. Excuse my overt nature there. But they should tailor their games to certain specific groups. If EverQuest Next wants to be an adventure game, then it should be an adventure game. You can't water it down in certain areas just because a certain player base is saying something. Now, if it's not just a vocal minority and the entire game population is saying, "Oh, this is terrible, this is really hard, you need to figure something out," then maybe you need to do a Guild Wars approach and rethink it. But then that could be laziness on design. Maybe those yellow circles were an easy way to show content. Maybe there was something else they could have done that didn't kind of water down the experience. Who knows,
Absolutely.
though?
I feel like a lot of games just only had kind of token ways to integrate gameplay with story in the past, and that was kind of the problem. Is there was no congruence from what you're doing and what actually happens. Like I was saying earlier, I come back with 10 bear butts. There's no 10 bear butts on the grill. There's no 10 bear butts on the vendor. There's, nothing's being done with those bear butts. They just gave me a little bit of experience and hopefully enough gold to be, worth my while.
And this is where I hope they
I think
don't
it's true.
simplify the roast song too much. I mean, I think that's where you can get away from circles and quest things over shinies over people's heads and be personalized. And it doesn't really
I don't
take
know.
away-
It's still tough, though. Yeah,
then
I mean, I
you know,
agree. Yeah.
You're presented
Sorry.
challenges based off of what you've done. That's why I hope it's not a linear push into one area and it actually takes the data it says it collects and uses it to you.
I suppose that's what it comes down to, isn't it? Sorry, Val.
I'm gonna go just because I had an idea, but
Okay.
I was just thinking from what you guys were talking about, like, how in college or school or whatever you have, you outline or you take notes, but then also like there's this new idea that people were doing, like mind mapping, and it was just all this raid. You make the circle and you connect everything, like, because people think in different ways than other people. And really, I look at, the way quests have been done in the past as like, the note-taking outline type. And what we're going to see in EverQuest next is more of like a mind map. You go to this NPC, he has, these 2 or 3 different things that he wants, and when you go there and do something there, you're going to run into other people that maybe have 1 or 2 things. And there's these interconnected spider web, kind of like a, neural network or something. It's just all these different 1, 2 forks, like a tree, it's almost like a tree of questing instead of, a linear path. So I don't know, that was just the thought I had while you guys were talking about the different stuff.
I totally agree with that, and I've just realised that I'm a massive hypocrite because I've said I don't read quest text, and I don't. And when I play MMOs, it's like I always go in. I'm like, all right, I want to read the stuff, and it's always more enjoyable when you just you take your foot off the gas and you read the stuff and you get involved in the story and you try and care about the world. But there always comes that point where you're like, right, I just want to get through this now. I just want to get to the next level. And that's when you start skipping reading some of it, and you kind of go faster and faster and faster. And then you're into the grind and you're into the cycle. And that's when I don't read it. But probably, I've realized this week because I've been playing Wasteland 2 and probably the original Fallout, because of when I played it when I was younger and everything, is probably my favorite game of all time. It was probably the game that I loved the most, like the first time I played it, and all of the flavor text in that I absolutely loved, and I thought was really brilliant, and always to me seemed to add so much to the game. So I don't know, it's like Val was saying about the way that it's presented in such a certain way, where you go and you talk to a person and then this thing pops up and you have to read the thing and then close the thing, and then I don't know, like as I walked around I always enjoyed the little descriptions of things that just popped up in the corner. But it's still to this day, it bothers me if I have to talk to an NPC for too long and read the quest text for too long. So maybe it's just for me personally, like that's the kind of presentation that I prefer. And it's just it's a battle that developers can't win, really, isn't it? People are always going to prefer different things.
So
it's kind of dated, I guess, because he's no longer in the project. But I talked with Dave Mark back when he was on the project with Story Breaks, and I think this kind of nails at exactly what we're talking about. Too much information when it's given, and he compared it to sort of I'm going to say this wrong, a Rorschach test, the ink block test.
Rorschach test.
Rorschach.
Thank you. But he was talking about it in terms of music production and walls of sound. But he was saying that AI and the AI they were trying to create was similar, that they didn't necessarily have to give you all the information at once, that there could be clues like the face of the actual NPC or a little piece of paper you found that you hover over. That I think that's going to be the main way they deliver the content. The row song itself, short little blurbs about this is there, go explore it, make it a visual storytelling. That, I mean, we're in a visual domain anyways. That's what video games really are at their core. and I think that's what we can maybe expect if they can do it. At least that's what he was talking about back then. We don't know what's changed or anything, but that's my ideal video game. I think is something where I don't necessarily. I love reading. I love that EverQuest taught me a lot of words, and RTSs back in the day taught me a lot of words when I was young. But like you said, Locke, I hate going into a quest hub and getting like 15 quests from one NPC, all with like 3 paragraphs of text for some reason about rats. Not even necessary. Not even necessary.
Yeah, I think it needs to be just enough, you know, like brevity is going to be the key, and any type of flavor texting in there should just be, you know, just that flavor. Like, I don't know if anybody's played Magic the Gathering, but you know, you have your cards and you have the important information right there, and occasionally there's like a little flavor text, which is really cool. It's not, you know, you don't feel like it's too much, and sometimes you want more too. So it's like, you know, nobody will ever be fully happy, but I think as long as they give us exactly what we need, the information, just to get us started, and then they can throw in some flavor text, but don't have a ton of extra flavor text. It's just going to be, you know, wasted man hours for probably about 75% of people.
I think painting in broad strokes is a really good start, and I think games like, I mean, it'd be so difficult to incorporate anything like it in an MMO, but games like Portal and Dark Souls that tell their story through the environment, and you know, like we were talking about, a more dynamic environment, I think dynamic NPCs lends itself to that. You know, when you go into an area, hopefully, you know, you'll be able to see they've hardly got any bare butts stockpiled. You know, everything's a bit shabby. The people are all looking down and miserable in like cheap clothes, and you go, oh, this is a poor town. And you know, you look around and through just looking at the area, you could probably work out why it was a poor town just by being there in the place. And I think, like, you know, I was saying, just looking at characters, painting in broad strokes, and then adding the detail, putting the detail in for people that want to find it, I think is a nice touch as well. But just wanna be in the world, man.
Man, I just want to be immersed.
Man,
We're 10 minutes into our Q&A, but I didn't really push us into it because we weren't getting questions, but we are getting quite a few now, so we'll roll into that.
They always wait. They do it on purpose.
Ask me personal questions, guys. This is your chance.
Our first question is, we already know. It says, do you think all races will start in Kinos, or will they be spread out in other cities? And we already know the answer to this. It was actually like the only big lore bomb we got when we were out there, because I was asking about the Dark Elves. You know, they're in Umbra. Do they come back to Norath? Do they come back to Lava Storm? Do they meet, you know, there? And they told us that the Dark Elves will return to Kunark, to the Combine, and arrive on Amaryl, or Antonica, I guess, the bigger half. I'm not sure which side they land on, but they're going to all land together. So, like, yes, we will all start in Kinos, and they have a big story reason for that. So it's not just to not make starting cities, it's actually
plus the rallying calls. You'll develop the cities over time and things like that.
Yeah,
but but that must be an EverQuest 2 player, because they did that with EverQuest 2. Is EverQuest 1 had all their separate starting cities, and EverQuest 2 said, hey, we've Kinos and Freeport with a bunch of different racial districts attached to them. So they all had little racial storylines within the big city, but you were still combined to kind of the two kind of large cities that fought each other. But then it branched out over time, and I think we could see something similar. I wouldn't say that your starting city really even matters in EverQuest Next because of things like the Rose Song. That's kind of a living guide. It might just be like, here's a base of operation. It's not that I'm going to be spending an hour here leveling up to try and move on. So our definition of the starting city needs to change as well with our discussion of this. But yeah, definitely one for now. But that doesn't mean you can't just go off and find something else out there. That doesn't mean there's not other cities waiting to be discovered, and that if you discover that city, it can become like a starting city to you. You can choose where you want to live in this world. At least I want to choose where to live, so I can live far away from Flatus and his damn bear butts.
So one thing that I'm really hoping for, yes, there'll definitely be the building of permanent locations with raid calls and rallying calls, but I'm hoping that we'll also have the ability to set up our own little forward operating bases, our own little camps and such, and be able to carve out just a little temporary spot in the world. If it gets knocked down, the area will pretty much be reclaimed by the territory, and that'll be that. Or maybe some other thing will kind of take over the spot once you've been kicked out. But that's definitely something I'd really like to see, is the ability to actually kind of make a place out in the world and be able to defend it and use it as a place of operations, possibly even being able to go as far as establish a temporary respawn point depending on how the death system works.
Yeah,
That'd be cool.
that'd be
I'd like that. I think it's quite. I mean, it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? But I always think it's quite nice in MMOs where you start in the same city. It kind of gives me the vibe of, like the mass immigration from Europe to America, when everyone kind of went through New York or New Amsterdam or whatever it was called.
So
at the
you're
time.
part of them, but the ones later can be segregated because they weren't part of the first movement. Is that what you're getting at, Locke?
I don't know. I just think it's.
You want to be able to
interesting
say that I was a Kinosian before you, and because of that, I banished
not at
you
all.
away.
I'm saying it's. I'm saying that if everyone as a character starts in the same area, I think it's interesting because from a role play kind of standpoint, it's interesting because it actually, in my opinion, it sort of opens up the world a lot more, and it gives you so much more options for what you do as a character. Whereas I don't know, racial starting cities was always a thing that.
Yeah,
No,
it's,
it never quite sat right with me. It's another one of those things of just, it's like having the two different factions and never the top. Why every single one lives here and nowhere else. And it's
The other thing, I think they kind of write it a little bit into how the characters start in the game, is that I'm pretty sure we're basically part of a convoy, a fleet of sorts, kind of coming back across to establish Kinos. And I would imagine when a new player, a new character is created and they first arrive, it was just one of the various larger and smaller vessels that somehow got astray during the journey and then just finally arrived there. So no matter if it's a week into the game or 5 years into the game, somehow they just arrived, still stragglers from this long journey from a while back. Or maybe that'll be something that changes at some point after a certain event has occurred. You don't start in Kinos anymore. All new characters start somewhere else, and completely different implications for how their stories are going to play out. Especially if Kinos is destroyed. If they fail rallying call defenses and it actually gets obliterated.
from what
I think it's cool.
We talked to Jeff at SOE Live, and I think somebody actually asked that question, can Kinos literally be razed to the ground? And I think they said, that is one exception. It might go back down to being a little frontier town, totally oppressed, but it won't. I think that it will never go away fully. So we should always see it there.
Yeah, I think
unless
there'll
a year from now it
kind of
changes.
anchors. Yeah,
You never know. I mean, they could just make a new anchor and then destroy the old anchor. Shift it
Yeah,
around.
that's a good point.
Yeah, I don't think it's beyond them. When once a city's established, that it can't become a new starting location, founding Halas or Neriak, and all of a sudden somebody who's in that race can decide to start there if they want to. I think it's important because, I don't know, the biggest reason, what Locke was kind of talking about before, having everybody start in one location is important because it does open up the world, because everywhere else is new. Nobody knows what's there yet. The whole world is new. Whereas if you have different starting locations, you're oh, okay, I know what's over here. I know where this is. I know who's there. So it really does. Everything is open door at that point. Whereas if you can start in a bunch of places, it's you kind of know a lot of what's in the world already, which I think it's less exploring is involved, and I don't know.
Yeah, on top of that, it's at the same time, it also changes your perception of the game, because if you're told to believe that this is a living, breathing world with thousands of players and you log into an area that's not a popular starting zone, then all of a sudden your giant MMO becomes this vast solo experience of you just trying to get to the other people. So I think that's a good point to make too, that if you do start the noobs together, then they can kind of learn together and grow together. It's forcing a little bit of community there.
I think gameplay-wise and community-wise, that's just what makes sense. But then equally, I hope for ancestral cities that you have to find and that hopefully eventually you have a reason to keep them there.
Yeah.
Necessarily
I mean,
start
I'd like
there.
to take up residence as a dark elf or something. If we found Neriak or something, that could be cool.
But yeah, hopefully through the
Well,
gameplay and the storyline, you discover your ancient city, you help build it, and then you have a reason to keep it, which is vastly different than just starting there and having no real
from what
reason
it
to stay
sounds
there.
like, that
That's
they've
true.
done in
Yeah.
the lore is that like almost every race really has a motive to expand in the world. Like the dark elves is pretty easily and obvious, they just want to dominate everything kind of and set up their structures everywhere. But like every race has, that's one thing I noticed too from reading the lore, like everybody has a reason to go somewhere else or to be somewhere and do something. And like the Karen, it's like actually, in the workshop we learned in their nature they want to travel the world, and they're guardians and caretakers of all of Norath, so they travel all around the world. So it would make sense for them to have, outposts here and there and be everywhere. So it's really, I don't know. And then they do have all the different factions that are going to kind of be battling for supremacy. So there's going to be
Yeah.
conflict that causes people to want stuff to exist or not exist. So it'll be dynamic, but there'll definitely be ancestral homes that I think will be really important to a race. That's like, okay, now this is how we differentiate ourselves. This is how we're unique from everybody else. We don't want to be in Kinos anymore, and you get like this new base of operations, I guess.
I just thought like starting. I like the idea of a multicultural city. Just in general, I think in a fantasy environment, that's just interesting to me. Like having all the races on top of each other and getting along. I
Yeah.
think just it's interesting, and then having obviously racial home cities and stuff. Someone whose name I won't try and say. White Bandit, is that right? Yes, White
The
Bandit in chat with lots
EQ1
of numbers in
comment,
the
I
name.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, it said like when you get to level 10, you start bumping into other races. That was amazing. That does sound really
Was.
cool, and like, I know how sort of difficult it is as a new player in EverQuest to get to that point, and that's really cool. But I think you can kind of turn that around and say, as a player of EverQuest Next, you start in this big kind of multicultural melting pot thing. In my head, it always looks like sort of Sherlock Holmes, like Victorian London. I don't know why. I read a lot of Discworld growing up, but but then like going out into the world and seeing stuff and like seeing all the different races and stuff, and then arriving at your sort of race's ancestral homeland. And we saw with SOE Live with the Dark Elves, like how neatly they sort of fit into that environment. For me, playing a dwarf, as I will be, obviously, because why would you play anything else? Like starting off in that kind of thing, and then going and finding the ancestral home and being in an environment where my character just seems to fit so neatly and surrounded by so many NPCs that are similar. I think to me that would be like a similar experience, in terms of my character, of finding that kind of homeland and somewhere that you just sort of fit in so neatly. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe it's
yeah,
not
no,
the
you have a
same
good
thing,
point.
but
I think of like Star Wars. I think of that sci-fi show Defiance. It's that small little town. It's a refugee city, so there's tons of different factions and different characters and races that don't get along in certain ways. So it creates a lot of turmoil, a lot of great story content right there. But then I could only imagine, being able to go back to my hometown. So being faced with adversity, defining myself within that adversity, but then being able to return to a place where I'm kind of homogenous and where I can kind of explore my inner true dark elf after, two different storylines. It depends, of course, if you're going to be a nerd like us and get into the story that much. But if you're a role player, it creates a lot of potential, because maybe the elves in Neriak didn't start off at the Combine. Maybe that they were there before, so they might have a different perspective on the world. You might grow up in this space in such a diverse area that you're kind of more accepting, but then you go there and maybe it's the opposite, that they say, oh, don't bring your orc friend around here, or don't bring your ogre friend around here. A lot of story potential, a lot of lore potential in that system. I agree, though, that starting cities, while it is really cool in EverQuest to be able to start in Felwith and find someone in Butcher Block who's from Caladem and be able to mesh with them is really cool, because I remember that experience. I was running through the forest and I found this gnome, and I was like, oh my god, I've never seen a gnome. What the hell are you? And then we kind of talked to each other to be like, hey, I come from this town called Felwith, and he roleplayed with me. Of course, I wasn't roleplaying. I was just like, holy shit, what does your home city actually look like? Yeah. But I think that it's a better starting experience to put them together, and I think that you can create that kind of experience of exploration and finding things with there's better ways to do it without kind of taking away from the new player experience. This is where I need water. Voila.
Our next question says, will players' stories affect the main lore? Can Rosong's records be added in the main lore somehow, potentially giving them a chance to become a legend?
Yes. Easy
This is-
answer, yes.
Yeah, this is. I like this question. It made me think like, well, what if I went out and had an encounter or some sort of task and I did it a certain way, and then Locke goes out and maybe he fails, or he does it a different way, and that NPC or whatever learns something new from him. It adds a new brick. Well, what if I come back now because what Locke has done somehow changed my original interaction? I don't know if that's possible, but that's sort of the idea that I get as far as individual stories impacting everyone else. I don't know if that makes sense.
There's actually
Yeah, it does.
something that I had written a while back, the equipment and crafting document and how to make that sort of stuff relevant. And basically the idea was you can, once a weapon's been forged, if that same builder or that same crafter or even other people work on it over time and maintain it and upgrade it and enhance it and all of that stuff, and it goes through various different deeds, it fights in many battles and slays many major foes throughout the world, then over time the item itself and the people who worked on it, their notoriety increases. It'll get to the point where that sword will just be so awesome and legendary. It doesn't matter that it was made with steel instead of mithril. It's so badass, and it's had such amazing deeds that it's gone through, that it's still going to be a top-notch weapon, and it's still going to have a very specific place in history. It might be the only weapon that can slay the the returned ghost of one of the creatures that was slain with it.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And yes, I agree that even if it can't happen now, that they should make the system so it can happen. EverQuest 2 made master crafting a thing when it was still kind of... It wasn't necessarily hard, you just had to press the right hotkeys to get a master crafted item, and you had to really get... It was luck of the draw. But it would put your name on there with the item. So it would say, this was made by Master Chuina. And so every person it was sold to, or when it traded hands, they could still see that it was made by me. Of course, later on, Mastercraft became nothing, so it didn't really matter anymore. But if you could keep that sense of, like, uniqueness to the item, what you're talking about, Legendary, that could be awesome. You could build it into the systems of the game itself to say, hey, this is some guy named Chuina. Maybe I'll go seek him out. I want a cool-ass sword, too. I'll defend.
Yeah.
The next question says, what do you think of using text-to-speech for quest dialogue? Should that be something SOE does to allow for dynamic text to be fully voiced?
There's a lot of smart people working on the audio over at SOE. Rodney Gates is one of them, and I met a few of the other ones. Unfortunately, their names aren't sticking out in my head right this moment. But they probably have a lot of systems that they're able to work on to be able to get pretty close to something that seems realistic, and however close they can get, tying it in with story bricks that actually adds potential emotion to it and urgency. That'll potentially be able to get something like that even closer. But I know there are systems out there, and I don't think SOE would be above and trying to go with a third party. They could potentially seek out that technology that exists elsewhere, integrate it with the technology they already have, and have a pretty modular system that will have variations, like it'll take their race, their height, maybe even some variations just based on their name, just some randomizers for the kind of filters and stuff. So every character will sound different and speak differently, and it's done in a procedural manner. That's definitely possible. Whether or not they'll do it initially, that's a lot of tech, but they could do it. I mean, they've got as long as they want to get the game out.
For me, I'd say no. Text-to-speech should never be an option, because I think it's a gimmick, like the Wiimote. And I think that's just taking it a little too far. We're talking about an already huge project, And for me, I don't want them to waste resources on something that might add to the gameplay maybe much later on. Now, what you were talking about, Legendary, with SOE mode, I think that's different. That's not necessarily me speaking into the computer and it typing it out to the NPC. That's more me communicating with other players. Voice fonts, they call it in EverQuest 2. And that's basic, like, oh, we're going to lower your pitch or raise your pitch. But if it can be done dynamically, like if I'm an ogre and my range of the pitch is kind of set if I want to enable the voice font, that could be really cool when talking with a Karen or something, depending on how cool they can make it sound, because typical voice modulation live isn't that good. It really isn't. Like, you couldn't add a growl to my voice if you wanted to, really. You could just kind of change around the pitch and the rate of my speech. But I don't know. Maybe they have some crazy tech. I don't know. I'll say no. I don't want that. And I don't think it'll be there.
I mean, if
also
you could have like a text to voice that didn't sound like a robot, then maybe. But then I think introducing an emotional range to that, like, I've never heard of a computer generated voice program that could convincingly get a speech pattern right to sound like angry convincingly.
Yeah,
like, it's a problem of intonation, isn't it? And
I think what Neuro was saying was that, you know, between the types of animations we're going to have and that Storybricks can act, you know, like set moods and do things to where the NPC will be animated with that emotion. So even if you don't have that emotion in the voice, you know, like it's still not going to sound terrible. I mean, it's not going to be like obvious like full over voice acting, but I mean, I'm in between both you guys because I don't want it right away because I'd rather them focus on other things like Chad was saying. But you know what, EverQuest the original just got like, you know, new loot system features now 15 years later. Like, it's, you know, that's something that can come later in time, sure. You know, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, and be really awesome, you know, or maybe 2 years down the road, I don't know. But I mean, it's cool because the way they're designing this game, the whole system to where, you know, players, we're going to be the content for each other. They're like taking all this load off their shoulders and being like, here you guys go. So now with all their development time, they can spend it doing stuff like that, you know, like, so I think it's totally possible and can happen and probably will if the core game that they're talking about now turns out the way that they're talking about. Because, you know, if they take that much weight off their shoulders, like as far as, you know, having to develop content constantly like other developers have to for their MMOs, like it's going to open up the door for them to use all that time and energy and effort and funding on other stuff like this cool stuff we're talking about.
I'm going to contradict myself and be a complete hypocrite because I would like text-to-speech as an accessibility option. I mean, like my cell phone, it never understands what the hell I'm saying very often. But if they could easily acquire a third-party system to where I might not have to type for those who might not, you know, some people don't spell that well or things like that. If they could have some kind of automated system as an accessibility option, I'd be totally down with that. Just as far as like for delivering storyline
for players,
stuff,
I just think for players, yeah, cool. But I think for if we're talking about NPCs and stuff, I'm just gonna call Uncanny Valley on it. I don't think
it wouldn't be good.
Like I can't imagine for the foreseeable future. You know, maybe I'll be totally wrong, and in 5 years it'll be brilliant. But
that Cortana
like, well, I mean, as soon as it has to convincingly emote, I think that's where it's gonna, like, just speaking in a normal like conversational tone, or like they're in a job interview or something, is one thing. But as soon as you have to add any kind of inflection, I don't know. Uncanny Valley, man. It'll be one of those things like it sounds amazing, but then it'll say something wrong, and it'll just completely take you out of it, and you'll be like, "Oh, this is just crap." And you know, years of research and development will be, you know, I don't know. We'll get there We'll get there eventually. Though, in our lifetimes, I'm sure we'll see it.
I understand the Uncanny Valley argument, which is why they do like, you know, they do the art elements stylized so that they don't hit the, you know, they don't get in that bad spot. So, you know, I'm wondering if they can get to that point with voice, you know, with voice software stuff, to where maybe it's just procedurally generating. Maybe there's some fully voice acted, you know, database of you know, sound things, and just depending on what the Storybricks guy does or says, because I mean, like, I don't know who's played Mass Effect, but you know how cleverly it was written to where no matter which choice you picked, you'd get the same response in the end, and it felt like it was the exact, response to you. I mean, the writing could be done cleverly enough that you can reuse, like sound bites. I don't know. Let's stop this. It's too late in the show for me to be.
No, the answer is no.
Pulling
I
stuff
don't
out of
see
my
it as I don't see it as a good source of like developmental time. I mean, I want a kick-ass AI system and visual storylines to where I don't have to read anything anyway. So what's the point of an NPC actually talking to me? Give me some awesome Jeremy Soule music and it can do the same thing because music is emotion.
It would be nice.
That's
It's a step on the path to the holodeck. So
It is. Yeah,
like
exactly.
eventually,
Yeah.
it's on.
When
the
we get
path
our
for sure.
Oasis system running, it'll be there.
Yeah.
So we are past our time. So if we didn't get to your questions, everyone, we apologize. Bring them next time. They might still be They might still be relevant, or we might just answer them
I
anyway.
had like 50 questions.
So yeah, there wasn't too many. I don't think we missed. So we'll try and answer them in the chat next time. Usually we have people in the chat. Actually, like Sog popped in for a second. Usually there's one of us in the chat, but we had a lot of things going on this week, so we were a little bit thinner this week. But for future episodes, definitely we'll try to get to all your questions. But anyhow, I'm going to kind of take us around the circle. Everybody, we're going to do our kind of like farewells and talk about what you're doing this coming week, what's going on in your personal realm of gaming influence. So Chad, what do you guys got going on for Evercast this week, and what are you doing?
Well, over at Evercast, connecting gamers with the game they play, we always strive to have an active debate within the community. We always try and bring on guests. So this next week, we are going to be discussing religion, similar to you guys discussing story a little bit, but talking about religion and how that plays into the story, what we'd like to see. You can always visit our kind of show notes at evercastshow.blogspot.com. It's kind of our show blog where we keep up with what's going on, what kind of contests we're running, and what kind of show topics are coming up for that week. We do not have a guest this week, so if anyone is interested, be sure to reach out to us. We also have an email, which you can find on the blog. And also Locke needs to come on sometime because we've already got you three. You three need to come back on, of course.
I do. I nearly was once, but I wasn't available, unfortunately. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed for that call to come again.
The great thing I love about these podcasts is the fact that it can bring such a large community together in such an easy to kind of digest format. Reading forum posts and kind of going from site to site can really just give you a small perspective on the community. And I think these shows do a really good job at bringing together all sorts of people from all sorts of different areas. So that's what Evercast strives to do. I know that's what you guys strive to do as well. Love your show. And thanks for letting me come on. And everyone, you better tune in Sunday at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern for the Evercast show. Thank you, guys.
Woo!
Locke, tell us what your tubings and things are doing.
He needs another card right now to read
God.
from.
Okay, I'm gonna do it properly. Are you ready? Do you believe in me?
I believe.
Right.
The beard.
Hi everyone, thanks for watching our show, what is called Theory Forge. My name's Locke. You can find me on the internet. There's a thing above my head, I think. Yes, there's a thing up there. It says Locke 6 time. That's where you can find me lots of places. Twitter's a good one to start. I'm always talking about what I'm up to and throwing out random ideas about games and stuff. We have a good old chat. Tomorrow I've got a thing on Zam.com. I write a column about EverQuest. Ostensibly it's about EverQuest Next and Landmark, but it's at the moment it's more kind of broader industry things and how EverQuest Next and Landmark fit into that, because there's not a huge amount of news coming out, let's be honest. So maybe check that out, Zam.com. Let's be honest. And I'm streaming more at the moment, like GMT evening time, which is like the middle of the day in America. Doing stuff, Locke 6 time again, Twitch, YouTube. I got videos. If you're interested in discussion on EverQuest Next and Landmark, I've got about, I don't know, what I'm up to, like 70 odd videos probably about EverQuest Next and Landmark.
You did that marathon, which was awesome.
Yeah, I did.
Has not checked that out. It's a great little marathon of hours.
The build up to SOE Live.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I
the
did
build-up,
6 hours. I did 6 hours worth of videos in July building up to SOE Live, and it was a ridiculous thing to do. And frankly, I was ashamed that I'd managed to do it. It just really like by the end, I was just like, guys, this is at this point, it's a cry for help. Let's be honest. Like, I mean, but you bunch of enablers just made it worse. So yeah, I mean, that's some stuff, and I'm here. You can find me here, and I don't know. Hopefully, I'll be on Evercast soon, and I don't know what else will be happening. Stuff, things. Cheers. It's nice to be here. Was that all right? I did it properly.
That was good. That was awesome.
Phantom X, go ahead and tell us what you got going on, and then I guess Neuro will follow him up and close us out.
Yeah, just the sort of normal stuff. If anybody out there has anything you want to share, builds, contests, whatever it might be, we try to help get that out there. The other big thing I want to mention, actually going forward, we'll have more shows in between now and then, so plenty of time to repeat it. Extra Life is coming up October 25th. We will be participating. Right now, it's me and Shantir, and we actually want to look at maybe even hosting other people's channels if you're participating on the EQ Next channel, and we will be giving away a lot of stuff. So it's a little ways away, but I just want to start getting that out there. So
I'm gonna cut Neurotoxin off because I forgot that I didn't say anything. So before he closes this out, I'm gonna be writing. I'm actually gonna be resurrecting a column we had on EQ Hammer called "The Hammer and Nail," where all of our columnists on board would like talk about a topic, just to give our own perspectives, kind of like these shows, what we're doing right now. But what we're going to do is we're going to change it to a community-based thing. So we'll just have the two, I think there's only like 3 columnists there right now with our little take on it, and we're going to reach out to people in the community. So if you're interested, reach out to me on Twitter down below my name there, and tell me that you want to be participating in it, and then I'll send out emails. I'll follow you, and then through Twitter DMs I'll send out I'll know who to get email and send to, so that you guys can give like a little 200 word something, answer a question, and it'll be a weekly thing. So anybody that kind of has some good ideas or good thoughts or wants to participate, let me know, and I'll try to hit a few of you guys every week. So I have that, and then that's really the only big new thing for me. Other than that, Neuro, take it away.
All right, so I've been hitting you with the creepy Chuina eating gif there a couple times throughout the show.
So what are we talking about? Where has this been?
You'll see it in a second here.
You are fine.
Yeah, I do all sorts of stuff. The next show, aside from Landmark Live that I do, is Content and Creations. That's Sundays from 1 to 5 p.m. Pacific time. And that one, that's basically it used to be Castles and Crap Shacks because we were doing tours. There's no more Crap Shacks in the world. People don't really build that many castles. So it's focused on 2 hours of touring content that people have made, and 2 hours of just beautiful builds and creations. Content, I'm talking about like interactive arenas and stuff like that. So that'll be the next thing. And one last thing that I want to leave everybody with here, our good friend Catchy is actually just starting up. They've got some giveaways and stuff going on, so head over to Catchy's channel there. I just linked it up. I will see you folks all over there, and it has been great having you on here, Chad. It's Chuina. It's always great having you on. You're awesome. Evercast show is awesome. I'm really glad, and of course, for folks who don't know, pretty much all of like EverQuest Next and Landmark podcasting and history is going on in the show here. We've got Chuina here, got Locke here, I'm here. We've got people who've been pretty much all over the place, going for a long time here. So, and of course, a lot of people in the chat here, been on some of the various different shows and been around here for a while. So, applause to everybody. It's awesome. I'm glad everybody's been sticking around, and the game's it's just barely now starting to really get rolling. So we've got a lot of awesome stuff in the future here. But that's it. I'm gonna wrap us up. Thank you all for coming. See you all later. Have a good one. And bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. God damn.